Roger and Sky's first adventure was quite small, but their next adventure was much bigger. They were sailing across the blue water, and Roger was looking out, and he saw an island up ahead, a little bit north. And he turned to Sky and he said, "Look, there's an island. We should head towards it, see what adventures are waiting for us." Well, Sky looked at him and said, "I don't know about that, Roger. We have plenty of supplies as it is. We've got more jam than we could eat in a year, and we're not really in the need to land on any island." But Roger only shook his head and said, "Sky, you are not thinking of things in the adventuring way. Why, we adventurers don't just go to islands to get things. We go to wonder, and who knows what we might actually find there. We might find a magic lamp or a hoard of treasure guarded by a dragon. Really, Sky?" Sky could only mumble to herself. She didn't really want to go, but Roger had saved her life, and she owed him. Besides, even though she thought he was a little grumpy, she couldn't help but feel that she kind of was starting to like him. Even though he could be kind of mean, there was something good in him. There was a sort of sparkle in his eyes. She couldn't really explain it. But the two of them soon docked on the island, and they began wandering around. And the first thing they noticed was that this jungle was that they were going into was so much bigger than any jungle on any island that they had lived on before. The trees were so big, they were bigger than the highest mountains, and they reached up into the clouds. And Sky swore that she saw a bird the size of an airplane flying around in the woods, although Roger assured her that the heat must be getting to her. But they walked for some time until finally they came to a path, and they saw a bright pink lizard on it. And this bright pink lizard was the same one from the movie Frozen 2. Now, Sky and Roger didn't know this. They had never watched the movie, although Sky could recall seeing an image of this creature somewhere. But Sky said, "Oh, look at it. Isn't it cute, Roger?" And Roger could only grumble. And Sky said, "Oh, we should follow it. I think it wants us to come with it." The lizard was indeed starting down the trail and looking back at them and flicking out its tongue. But Roger only shook his head. "No, Sky, that lizard is going down the beaten trail, and you know that I never go down the beaten trail. I always wander aimlessly through the jungle, as any good adventurer should." Well, Sky looked at him for a moment and said, "Roger, I must say that I just don't agree with your philosophy. People make trails for a reason, and that lizard really looks like it wants us to come with it. So I think I'm going to follow it, if you don't mind." And Roger looked at her for a moment and said, "Well, you're a free dog. You can do what you please." And Sky gave him a smile and said, "Oh, you're so sweet. And I assure you, I'll meet you back here at this trail in just an hour." Well, anyway, Sky started heading off after the lizard, again saying how thankful she was to Roger for letting her go, and Roger saying that it was no big deal at all. But Roger decided to keep heading through the woods, and as he headed through them, he soon came to a clearing. It was a big, dry desert. And he looked around and he saw a boot that was the size of a house. And he started to study it, but he couldn't understand what kind of creature could have worn such a thing. But he continued walking, and eventually he came to a stone, a big stone, about the size of a boulder, and he decided he'd rest there. So he laid down on the boulder, and he sat there, and he twiddled his stick for a bit, and as he was looking down at the boulder, he thought to himself, "Well, look at that. That looks like two pairs of closed eyes, and a nose, and a mouth. And Roger, sort of chuckled to himself. I wonder if I prodded the stick into it, if it wouldn't yelp and jump up and show itself to be some giant that lived here. Well, anyways, he poked the stick in the creature's eye, and sure enough, he was right. It was the same giant from Frozen 2, a big stone giant, and the giant stood up and it let out a loud yowl that sounded all across the island. And Roger fell down, and the giant said, "Who did that? Who has disturbed my slumber?" And Roger was shaking in his boots. He wasn't really as tough of a cat all the time as he pretended to be, although he was quite a tough cat. But the giant looked down at him and said, "A cat!" He grabbed Roger by the tail and he looked at him. "Oh, you are so small I could squeeze you and pop you like a zit." Well, Roger looked at him and said, "Oh, please don't do that. Why, I could be your servant for you." "A servant?" said the giant. "Well, then, you come to my house, and you can do some work for me." So anyways, they set it off. And the first task that the giant set for Roger was that he was to pick apples in his orchard. And he warned them that he had a big dog, and that if Roger tried to escape, he would send the dog after him. And this dog wasn't as friendly as Sky. Indeed, he was a giant dog, which is quite a different thing from Sky altogether, but that's another story. But anyways, Roger went to work in the orchard, picking giant apples and trying to fit them in the wagon. And he got quite a lot, but they were very heavy. And at one point he picked an apple, and the apple was so heavy that he fell back down in the wagon and began going down the hill. And he landed into a tree. And on that tree was a beehive, and it fell down, and it broke into 100 pieces, and the bees started swarming around. And the first thing they saw was the giant, who happened to be coming by to pick an apple for himself. And they all went after the giant and began stinging him, and he began yelling and yelping. And Roger watched in awe as he realized that he was probably going to get punished for this. And punished for this indeed he was. The giant had him do some gardening for him. And at first Roger was quite good at this. He poured some water on the flowers, and they grew and bloomed, and they looked quite beautiful. And Roger realized that he did have a little bit of a green thumb, which is rare for a cat, actually. But one day Roger made a rather unfortunate mistake. He got a canteen of some kind of acid, a magical concoction that the giant had made, and he began pouring it on all the flowers, and they withered and died. And soon enough, the whole garden was like this, just a bunch of dead sticks and dead flowers, and the giant was not happy at all and said, "All right then, you shall go ahead and fix my bath up." Well, Roger had never liked water, so this was the scariest thing of all. But he did as the giant told him, and he filled up the bathtub. But as he was sitting there, the dog came sniffing by, and the dog put up its nose, and Roger, who was, of course, afraid of dogs, except Sky, jumped off into the water and landed straight in. And he swam up to the giant's toy boat, and he got inside of it. And when the giant came, and he was in his swim trunks, he decided he was going to take his bath. He hopped in, and he began splashing around and playing with the toy boat and his big toy ducks, and Roger was flinged around and around. He really, even though he was quite good at seafaring now, was having a bit of a time trying to keep the thing afloat, especially with a giant rubber duck attacking him. But soon enough, the giant got bored, and he pulled the drain, and the water began going down, and it was very lucky that Roger didn't go down the drain himself. But it took him quite a long time to get back to the giant, many hours, and when the giant finally saw him, he said, "Well, you are late, and this is the final straw. Now I am going to eat you, skin you, and roast you over a fire." And the cat said, and Roger said, "Oh, giant, please don't do that. I've tried so very hard. "Trying is not enough in this world," said the giant. "Come, the time has come." And he picked up the cat by the tail. But just then there was a loud noise, a thud, thud, thud. It sounded like an earthquake. And Roger was terrified that not only would he have to deal with a giant, but also the whole earth breaking apart as well. But it turned out it wasn't an earthquake. As Roger looked out, he saw that there was an even bigger giant coming towards them. A giant that dwarfed this giant, made it look very small indeed. And the giant came up, and then it let out a loud roar, and Roger looked up and noticed that there was a little dog perched on the top of the shoulders, and a lizard as well. And Sky said, "Roger, there you are." And the giant said, "Redbone, what have you been doing with this cat?" And the giant said, "Well, just performing one of my little experiments on it." "Oh, you and your little experiments. You're always taking little creatures and doing things with them. Whew, it's hideous," said the giant. And he gave, he pinched the other giant on the ear, and the giant let out a loud yell. And, as Sky came down to Roger and the lizard, and she said, "Oh, this lizard led me straight to his master. He's very nice. And, he wanted to let us know that he has, plenty of stories to tell us and any supplies that we might need, although I told him we didn't need much." And the big giant said to Redbone as the two of them were talking, "Now you remember, never again do you treat strangers with such disrespect. You treat them like they are kings, for they may come and they may go, and you never know when someone might owe you a favor." Well, anyways, Redbone, he could only grumble, and he went back into his hut. And the big giant said, "Come, come, I will treat you like kings. It is our duty to treat any stranger with kindness and generosity. And maybe one day it comes back to us, but if not, well, we were just glad to do it." Well, they all went back to the big giant's hut, and they had a long, long feast, and they enjoyed themselves, and Roger and Sky got to meet all the other big giants. But eventually they realized that they would have to go. They'd have to set off for more adventure, and Roger and Sky said goodbye. And Roger said, "Well, I suppose there are benefits, I must admit, to staying on the beaten path, Sky." And Sky laughed and said, "Oh, it's all right, Roger. You were in a way right. You did come across some great adventures by going off the beaten trail. I guess there's just sometimes you just have to make up your own mind and see how you feel about it, I guess. Well, I guess that's the only way I can really explain it." Roger pulled out his little man from his pocket and said, "From now on, I think I'm going to play with my toys a little more gently. After all, if we're going to be giants, Sky, we have to learn mercy and kindness." And he smiled at Sky, and Sky smiled at him as they set off for another island out in the waves.